attacking unit is what I want to talk about. And I want to talk about the optimal attacking unit and how Maresca is kind of looking to create this attacking unit and what he wants in this attacking unit to build an optimal and functional attack. Now, this is, of course, quite reductive. These are quite reductive terms. These are very simplistic, and there's a lot more to this. But what I wanted to start this sort of section with is, in an attack, most teams at the minute, they sort of defend with 5, whether that's a 3-2 rest defense, whether it's a 4-1. It depends how teams are sort of shaping up. But most teams will attack with 5 in the last line, or they'll look to have 5 attack in the last line with either your 2 number 10s or 2 number 8s. You have your 2 wingers. Again, this could be a fullback providing width. The fullback could be providing sort of in the middle of the pitch. They could be inverted. And then, of course, you've got your striker. So you got those 5 players sort of shifted along the front. Again, in Chelsea dynamic and system, you would see last season you would have seen 2 high and wide wingers, 2 number 8, the number 10 of Cole Palmer, and then say Enzo Fernandez pushed up, and then you got the number 9 up front. So within these 5 roles, what you really want is you want your primary creator, okay? So in this sense, we're talking Cole Palmer. Primary creator, whether he starts on the right, whether he starts in the 10, he's your primary creator. Now, one thing to point out about being the primary creator and the secondary creator, which as you can see is the second sort of role here, it's not about volume of creating. I think sometimes the secondary creator, because, for example, let's say that the secondary creator in last year's system, or even in points going into next season, Enzo Fernandez. That's not to say in some games Enzo Fernandez won't have more involvement because Cole Palmer will be marked out of the game more often. He'll be man-marked, and he can influence the game in a different way. Think of it as basketball. You've got your primary ball handler. But if they get double-teamed, who's your second guy? And I think as a creator, that's Enzo Fernandez. Again, Enzo Fernandez, what's brilliant about a team like Chelsea or a team that's sort of like the top end is usually your secondary creator has the ability and the quality to be a primary creator in another team because they're good enough for that. And that's why you're so strong elite teams. They have that depth. They have that level of quality. Now, important, I've put here runner, and I've just put it as 2, so you can have runner 1, runner 2. It's not really, the point is you need both. You need at least 2 runners, in my opinion. If you have 1 runner, in certain games, it can work. But you need to have 2 people that sort of stretch the pitch because otherwise it's much easier to sort of get close to and stop these creators really influencing the game to the level that they want to. Of course, they still can because they're quality players, but these runners are so important. And last season when Madueke and Jackson both went down injured, Chelsea really suffered in that sense because Pedro Neto was the only one really providing those runs in behind. And then you had the likes of Palmer, Sancho, Enzo, all sort of ball-to-feet players that were really struggling to sort of open up those spaces, and Gusto was actually somebody who provided a little bit of an option as that runner whilst those players was out. And that's something that we're going to have to, again, discuss going into this sort of how Enzo Maresca is sort of trying to build this team. Now, number 5, we've written down here is a filler. Now, what I mean by this is he can be a bit of everything. He can be sort of that third ball handler if you need him to. He can drop in deep. He can run in behind. He can be a hold-up player. He can they can do a lot of everything, and they can be almost what the manager needs is like a flex player to offer what they need at that very moment. So if they need extra of something, that's what they can bring. Now, like I said, this is very reductive. Now, what you're also then looking at is within these roles, do you have different forms of creativity? Do you have creative passers? Do you have players that are do you have a crosser in the team? Somebody who's got very good sort of crossing ability? Do you have shooters? Another key one. Again, do you have those outlet runners? Do you have sort of relentless runners in behind? Things like this, okay? So that is something to take into account. When I say these 5 roles, it doesn't then mean that that's just it. Obviously, of course, within these roles, you then have a list of sort of key performance indicators where you need to find those and make sure that the team has a good mixture of everything. Now, if we go back to where is it? Here. Now that we've got an understanding of what the roles are, again, vaguely, Cole Palmer, whether he's on the right or he's in the 10, that is going to be your sort of primary creator. Now, Enzo, let's do a different color box. Enzo has sort of been your secondary creator. Okay. your runners last season, but again, let's say this season as well, because you have Madueke. Let's put it as yellow. Let's say they're your runners, your two wide men. And then you got your flex player in João Pedro. Now, how can this twist with the signings that we've got? Now, one thing, of course, you got, if this was to be these two are the pocket players, let's say Palmer's in the 10, Neto's on the right, Gittins on the left. Both these players can provide the relentless running on the outside. Perfect. João Pedro, perfect to be that flex player. Very, very good. Now, let's say Delap starts up front. Now, Delap is you could call him a bit of a flex player, but I think with how Enzo Maresca is going to use him as an outlet, he'd be deemed as more of sort of a relentless runner. He's going to cause chaos in behind. He's going to sort of attack those spaces in the channels. He's going to be more of a runner. I would say the same for Jackson if he's in the team. So let's just have it as that now becomes a runner. Now, you can sort of have it where, let's say, Neto, you don't really need all three of these to be runners. And again, certain games, maybe you do. If they play a really high line, let's say against Brighton last season, you probably do want to have the extra runner in the front line and just leave this sort of long ball and like that creative ability in the middle of the park. So in this sense, maybe you do add the extra runner into the team. But if you're trying to keep that sort of optimal balance, this is now maybe where Neto could come out, Esteval could come in, and Esteval kind of becomes that flex player because he can sort of swap over with Palmer when he needs to. He can offer that little bit of creativity. He's also got the ability to run in behind and score goals. He can be a bit of everything. He can join in with the creativity in the middle of the park, or he could even become your secondary creator because him and Palmer, especially on that right-hand side, they sort of have that link, which then means that Enzo maybe isn't needed in there for that same role. Now, again, Enzo can be a bit of a flex player because he can attack the box. And these players, a lot of them have the ability to do multiple things. But this could then maybe even be, let's say that, I don't know, Enzo was to drop back. Now, this would be with Caicedo, but let's just say Enzo sort of, let's say if he was to either drop back or be out the team. This player could now be, again, it can be a little bit of what do you want in the team for this any given game. Now, with everything that's in here, you probably want a good supply for Gittins on this left side. You probably want somebody who can create from those central areas, but also carry the ball forwards. And this is where someone like Simmons or Rogers or Eze maybe fits really nicely in the number 10. Okay. Now, again, the problem with this is now you're essentially a midfielder light unless you're playing Simmons and Palmer as those number 8s, which is now where all this flexibility starts to come in. Now, this is kind of why I wanted to add a lot of sort of context to this chat, because in tomorrow's video, you're going to see why I think Simmons makes a lot of sense now that we've signed Gittins, because I think if I show you now what I think one of the like key teams could be next season. Now, Esteval, I think so good, but I do think that eventually, where's João Pedro? Yeah. I do think that maybe he needs a little bit of time to settle in. So I do think that João Pedro will probably start as the striker. If Simmons was to be in here, he's probably going to be your secondary creator, okay, as your pocket player. Now, you probably lack a runner, but with Palmer coming off the right in this instance, Gittins starting because he is your main outlet threat that we've bought in this summer. He's a powerful runner. This is why I made it so clear that I wanted Gittins through the door before we signed one of these hybrid players, because I think that his skill set is something that we need massively. So then, all of a sudden, you kind of want Gusto. Can't find Gusto now. There. He's going to be your runner. And we saw that against PSG. So now you've got Gusto and Gittins offering those relentless runs. You've got Cucurella, you've got these players behind the ball. And now, yes, for James, what that does mean is, do you see him playing as a central midfielder? Do you see him maybe getting rested where some games he doesn't play at all? And again, it's maybe Enzo in there, and you've got this two-man midfield here, where Enzo can play a bit deeper. Now, we're going to talk about why Simmons is again, one of his sort of key traits is he can track back quite well, and he will defend backwards as well as forwards, which could help to protect Enzo. And, of course, he has Cucurella on that side of the pitch as well. So it's a way of protecting Enzo Fernandez in a deeper role by having somebody who can work hard here. That's something we spoke about with João Pedro as well. Whereas let's say with Eze, maybe doesn't have that same sort of ability to run backwards as quickly and to work as hard off the ball. Let's not say he doesn't work at all, but he has some other different traits, whereas that I think maybe Simmons doesn't have. Now, again, I'm going to leave that for tomorrow's video to talk about the exact traits that these players have that would help and wouldn't help. But what I wanted to sort of speak about, and what I want you guys to sort of comment on, is what do you think the best balance in our attack is next season? Because if we were to say have Simmons on the left, well, I'm going to end off with this sort of like hypothetical. Get rid of these boxes. Let's say Gittins isn't fully ready. Simmons is starting off the left. Palmer's probably in the 10, which means Gusto probably isn't in the team, and it's maybe Reece James sort of inverting. Let's put Reece James in the midfield with Casado. In this scenario, with Simmons on the left, Enzo in the pocket, and Palmer here, you've got a lot of ball-to-feet inside players. So I think you'd either be asking a lot of Cucurella. Just trying to get an arrow there. You'd either be asking a lot of Cucurella to really get forward and sort of only leave 4 at the back so that he can really become an extra runner. This would probably have to be Neto to offer that runner. And again, this is when we've lost Madueke now. We don't have that. Exactly what Zach says here. With that setup, you need Neto right wing bare minimum because you don't have the runners. And maybe in this scenario, yes, João Pedro can run the channels, but maybe you want somebody a bit more relentless. So maybe in that sense, you do want someone like Nicholas Jackson in there. Because you've got so much creativity, you need runners to sort of take away and allow Palmer to have that more space in the box. Now, again, João Pedro has the ability to do all of those things. So it's not like you can't start with him in there. But it's just one of those sort of things that I think is something to take into account. And this video, this sort of section, was more so to give you context ready to apply in tomorrow's video when we speak about Xavi Simmons and what he can add to the team. Because I do think that now that we've signed Gittins, I'm much more open to Xavi Simmons than I was before we signed Gittins, because of the extra sort of transition power and speed and pace on the outside of a block that I do think that Chelsea need.